November 6th edition of the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series brought to you by the National Urban League. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm East Coast Executives. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. The Digital Career Success Series, DCSS, is a professional development series that helps members of our Urban League Young Professional chapters and other diverse job seekers develop new skill sets that will enhance their careers through digital platforms such as Facebook, Instagram Live, and other digital platforms. The goal is to provide an opportunity for professional development right from one's computer. If you want to know more, visit us at nuljobsnetwork.com. Today's Digital Career Success Series, The Art of Negotiation, features Carla Wagner. We'll touch on everything you should know to master negotiation techniques for the workplace. Carla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Man, we are excited to have you. You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about you this morning and you being on the show. So I had to go back into my inbox and see when we first connected. And that was back in 2020. We connected. You were so extremely helpful. And I'm really excited to have you here today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm so excited to continue the relationship. I bring you greetings from Fenton Communications. And we're excited to talk about the techniques of negotiation and help all the young folks that are on the call today.
Well, we're gonna talk about that, but first, let's talk a little bit about you. Can you tell our Digital Career Success Series audience a little bit about you? Listen, I want to tell you in advance, our audience, they're really active. They're always excited. They're always supportive. I'm sure they're in the chat, letting everyone know where they're from, telling everyone how they feel today. But for a minute here, let's just talk a little bit about you specifically.
Sure. So again, born and raised in Michigan, and I'm happy to be here on this wonderful sunny day. We have been in HR, I don't know, a couple decades now, and I'm currently at Fenton Communication, which is the first national agency dedicated exclusively to social impact. So all the things that are important to us, reproductive freedoms, environmental issues, that's what we do. And so that's why, yesterday's results or this morning's results we're energized. Fenton was built for this, and this is where the rubber meets the road, and we'll be able to help folks accomplish their goals. Personally, I am in charge of the development and execution of our talent-centric strategy. I have been in the PR industry probably for the last 10 years or so, doing stuff from high-stakes strategic communications to luxury retail, focusing always, looking at everything always from a DEI lens and making sure that we're building the right cultures. My previous role, I was the head of people and culture for North America and sat on the board for Finsbury, which is now FGS Global, and focus on talent management and organizational culture. In my free time, I've been so blessed to build an organization called the Black Santa Experience, which is an immersive holiday experience for folks to celebrate our culture. And it celebrates Black entrepreneurship. We bring dozens of Black-owned businesses together on Small Business Saturday, bring a Santa that looks like us so kids can engage with folks that are from our community. And it's a wonderful celebration. It's our third year. We had about 800 people our first year. We increased our participation by about 50% last year, and we're expecting this year, about 2,000, 2,500 people. So I'm blessed to work at Fenton because not only do they appreciate what I bring on the HR side, but they also truly let me bring my whole self to work and support me in this endeavor as well.
You're speaking about the Santa thing, and I'm looking at that chair, and it just hit me like, hey, hold on, that chair is like the chair that Santa sits in, right? So had to laugh about that for a second.
Yeah, it's either Santa or Alice in Wonderland or something, but I always think a little levity is fun. And the last thing folks want is the head of HR popping on the screen with them. So this hopefully it kind of makes it a little bit easier conversation.
I love it. I love it. Now I know you're with organizations that typically specialize in crisis management, social impact, things of that nature. And I think that this topic, one of the reasons I wanted you to join us for this particular topic is because people typically need to negotiate with yourself first. And sometimes that's an internal crisis. It's definitely socially impactful, right? But let's talk a little bit about like what that means to you, negotiating with yourself first.
Sure. Preparation. So you don't want to go into any negotiation and you have not prepared. So my first thing is prepare, prepare, prepare. You want to start all your negotiations with yourself before engaging with others. And you should ask yourself, why is this important to me? You have to have a clear articulation of your desires in order to achieve that success. And then what does success look like for you? Not only for you, but the folks that you're going to engage with. What data supports your position? And what's in it for you and the other partner? There's a theme here because not only in the negotiation are you talking about yourself, but you also want to see how that's going to impact the folks that you're negotiating with. And then define your boundaries, like what's negotiable and what's a bridge too far. So how much are you willing to concede, because you'll have to. But these reflections will give you the confidence to successfully engage with the other party. And you also want to remember that a successful negotiation doesn't mean getting everything that you want, but it's really about reaching an outcome that will help you meet your primary goals.
I can appreciate that. I think sometimes just when you hear the term negotiation, people always get into a win-lose scenario. And I don't know if that's the way to look at it, especially as it relates to workplace, right? You really want win-win scenarios. Can you speak a little bit about how people can position themselves for that with this negotiate with yourself first philosophy?
Well, I feel like you read my notes because that was my second slide. You have to position yourself in a win-win situation. We talk about the word, we'll say the word negotiation 1,000 times today, right? So at the risk of appearing slightly duplicitous, I offer that we instead focus on, instead of the word negotiation, you think of it as influence and persuasion, because that's the real mindset shift, in my opinion. When I hear negotiation, just as you said, some people think there's a winner and a loser, but if your goal is win-win, I think you'll get the outcome that you're looking for. I think influence and persuasion are more expansive, more fluid, because what you're really trying to do is win the hearts and minds of others, on people on the other side. So that's where the preparation comes in. And not to nerd out too much, but there's some really interesting work done by neuroscientist David Rock, as it underlines the importance of reframing our mindset around the topic of negotiation. He's got this acronym called SCARF. I encourage you all to go and check it out. We're not going to do it today, but that's the shift, being able to change your perspective and get success, and not only looking at from what I want, my desired outcome, but how it's going to impact the others.
So as we shift away from the negotiation mindset, right?
Mhm.
I'm really curious about this one. As we do that in workplace negotiations, right? They can kind of be spontaneous. So in preparing and always being prepared or always being ready for an impromptu negotiation, do you have any tips or strategies maybe that individuals can use just to say, hey, you know what, this didn't really catch me off guard because I have a blueprint for success in this scenario?
Well, sure. So I think some of the things that you want to know your audience, you want to know kind of what the pain points of the individuals are, because let's think about it. You negotiate 100 times a day. What we're eating for dinner, where we going on vacation, all the way up to negotiating the terms and conditions of your offer letter, right? So you're always negotiating. And while we're talking about the offer, I just digress for 1 second. If you do get an offer, your stock is never higher than the point of the extension of the offer to the time you sign that offer letter. So anything you want to negotiate, you do it in that golden moment, because once you sign the offer letter, you're good. You're done on the negotiation part. So often,
What? No, let's stay there for a second. I always find that interesting because I always share with people that we work with here at East Coast Executives that even earlier, right? And when people decide that they're going to interview you and bring you in, typically, if they're being authentic, that means they saw something that they're interested in, right? And then you navigate through that process or series of interviews. And when you're fortunate enough to get to a point where there's an offer letter extended, to your point, you got them. You
it
like
helps
you
you.
have that's your highest value point.
That is your highest value point, and your value will never be that high again during your tenure. And that's not to say that you're not important and you don't have value, but it's the highest at that time. From the time you get that letter to the time you sign it, because the recruiter has probably worked with you for 4, 6, 8, or somebody. They've been having an active search for a long time. They finally found the candidate that hits all the boxes and everybody's excited about it. And they don't want to restart that search. So they want to close the deal. So anything you want to ask, more PTO, a sign-on bonus, a negotiating a salary, any of those things, you ask then, because after you've signed and you've accepted, you are now governed by the terms and conditions of every single person, everybody else is. And so use that time. And sometimes I've talked to a lot of people by doing this for so long, and my friends will come and think, well, what happened? You missed your window. Because now
Mm.
we're not renegotiating the deal after you've joined already. Like, oh yeah, no, you've got that time and your stock, do it while your stock is high.
Yeah, everybody at that point, everyone's invested in a successful outcome, right?
That's right. The last thing a recruiter wants to go and say, they decline the offer. Because in the business person, they're like, why? What? For what? And so you don't, so they'll do anything they need to do to close the deal within reason. And so have your facts, know what your value is in the marketplace, and ask for it. And don't be afraid, because in most instances during that time, we're going to say yes, because we don't want to lose you.
Hey, Carla, have you seen scenarios, or what are your thoughts on scenarios where individuals maybe they can't reach agreement on a particular thing, right? And I'm talking about it from the offer letter to the acceptance point, right?
Mhm.
But then the candidate says, hey, listen, all right, I understand you guys may have some reluctance to provide this at this current time, but can we come back and revisit? Can we agree to come back and revisit this 6 months from now in maybe a semi-annual performance review? Any thoughts on that?
I've seen that. I've done that. Sometimes you can't come to agreement on money. If I know my ceiling right now is X, I was 180,000, and you're asking for 225,000 or something like that. And you're honest. This is what I can do right now. But let me tell you, if over the next 6 months you do blah, 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 then we can take you to, I can get you to 210 or 215. And that's, again, when you talk about preparation, kind of know what you're going to, what your limits are, what your boundaries are. And if that's acceptable, then do that. Again, folks want you. We're not going to let the deal fall to pieces over a few $1,000s. And so if we can spread it out over time, it's better for the business. It also lets us see, an investment. You're putting in some skin in the game. The firm has some skin in the game. And again, it's the win-win that you want. Nobody, I was gonna say it's later, but a good friend of mine, a lawyer friend, he says the best negotiation is when both people get up from the table and feel as though they've given just a little bit more than they had anticipated. Right.
I
So
like it.
so if you can figure out a win-win, then do it.
Listen, it's the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. If you're just joining us, we're here with Carla Wagner. I'm Kenneth L. Johnson. We're talking about the art of negotiation. Carla, I honestly believe that one of the keys to negotiation is doing your research prior. Tell me your thoughts on kind of how people should navigate and I know we're not being really specific. We're just being in general with workplace negotiations. But I think you need to negotiate the person on the other side of the table, but also kind of a broad-based negotiation on how the company's navigated in the past, how the industry's moving, what's happening in your specific vertical. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts around some of that research that needs to take place.
Yeah, so let's talk in the workplace. And so I believe that, practically speaking, that the critical work for a negotiation begins before you even get to the table. And this in your preparations before the meeting. So if you're working on an initiative that you're trying to get through, go find somebody who's a loud voice in your room, a friendly, or even people that aren't friendly that may not even think similarly to you, and go and say, ask for their thought leadership. This is what I'm proposing. I would love your partnership on this. Find out what their pain points are and then address them in your proposal. And so ask them what they need from you in order to support your initiative, because your goal is that when you're in there presenting your initiative or when you're negotiating or whatever, you need people to start nodding their heads in agreement with what you're saying. And then when you're engaging in these robust discussions, they can even speak on your behalf. It is the more people that you can bring on board, and bring them along, that's the influence and that's the persuasion that I talk about. And that's how you achieve your goal. Because you can't do it on your own, right? And none of us are unilateral, until there becomes Carla Wagner Industries. I need everyone at the table to help me move this thing along. So let me find out what you need. And I'm going to put that in there. And so if people feel like there's some investment, they've got skin in the game with you, that's how you move your goal forward.
Carla Wagner Industries. I like how that sounds. I just want to let you know. I really like it.
I like it too.
I think you got some friends in here in the chat, because I'm seeing all these Midwestern cities. I'm seeing Ohio's, I'm seeing Michigan's. I'm like, maybe people are here because Carla's here today. So we appreciate everyone for joining us.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, listen, we will have a Q&A segment, so please drop any questions that you have in the Q&A, and we'll take a look and try to get those answered. So Carla, we're talking about this mastering negotiations, and you say envision the possible outcomes of a win-win situation. So let's just back up a little and maybe educate the audience on what a win-win actually is.
Well, sure. So a win-win is when both parties feel as though they won, right? So when both parties walk away like, yeah, we can do that. Because you don't want someone to feel, one person to be elated and the other person to be dejected, because that could ruin a relationship. So you want both people to feel, okay, maybe this wasn't I had 5 points. If I won on 3, I'm all right with that. So you want everyone, you want to kind of create these win-win scenarios for every interaction. Um, I'm a big believer in visualization. So you should visualize your desired outcome. You think about what you're negotiating or what it is that you're working on, what goal you want to achieve with this, and what does success look like in that. So if I get 3 of the 5 things I want, what does that look like? And how does that make me feel? And then what do I need to do to achieve that goal? That will help you as you envision the possible outcome. You give yourself time to think about the other party's reaction and then gain insight into what strategies and tactics that you might want to employ. If you are able to, again, as I mentioned before, go to somebody and kind of bring them along, ask for their thought partnership, then you can start to overcome the objections before they're even raised at the table. That's how you get to the win-win. You always have to consider the other party.
Tell me about this thought partnership process. What is that?
So just when you are, they just, it's kind of corporate speak, but you go and you ask a colleague, right? So I have something right now. So we're working on a major compensation redo. And I could sit and have a fully baked compensation program, and I could bring it and go, here it is, congratulations, love it. And I know it's great. I've worked on it for weeks. You're going to love it. Or I could go and I could say to other senior leaders, hey, this is what I'm working on, but I would love to get your thoughts. And I want to make sure, does this feel right to you? Are the numbers right? Is the positioning right? How do you think we should communicate this thing? Now, this isn't just Carla's plan. This is Carla's, that was everybody's plan, because now everybody has had input in it. So I'm not out there on an island by myself, because when you talk to a small group, sometimes, especially as you become more senior in an organization, you do become a bit in a vacuum. So you miss what the masses are going to say. So the more you can kind of socialize that and get other people's thoughtful insight or and what they are, some insight on where you think. And sometimes you can even learn. I'm in human resources. If I want to learn more about the account side, I'm going to bring the people in that lead the accounts. And so it's just, taking their expertise and using it where it's valuable for you.
I'm listening to this, and this sounds a lot like kind of leveraging sponsorship for success, right? Because you're bringing people into the conversation by giving them some skin in the game, let's just say, or at least making them aware of what you're looking to do. Then that in turn allows them to advocate for you outside of that room, but with their peers or with the people that are on vertical lines with them, to help you achieve what it is that you're looking to achieve, even without you asking for that type of help.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's how you
Amazing.
do it. Because it's stressful. You can't do it all by yourself. Again, you're not allowed. Even the CEO can't make unilateral decisions. So even though I think this is the best thing in the world, unless I have some folks that are going to be a sponsor, right? It's not going to get through. You can't do anything. And so I found early on the more people you can bring on and start having, again, those head nodding in that room when you're making your presentation, it's golden. Once you get people nodding in agreement, it's good. It's good. We love
So,
it.
so how do we do this? But because oftentimes people are coached to not let everyone know what it is that they're looking to do because it can be competitive in workplace environments.
That's true.
So how do we balance who we share information with if we're looking to position ourselves for future negotiations?
Yeah. So I like to, I like to see who's the loudest voice in the room, who carries the most influence in that room. Because if you're loud and people are gonna follow you, I need you to be on my side, right? And so I'll go to you. Hey, and sometimes we may not see eye to eye on things. A perfect example was a program that we had implemented at Fenton. It was for entry level folks. It was a 2-year program, and there's some pretty firm rules. It's 2 years, and then you're promoted to this next position. If your performance does not merit the promotion, you will not be promoted and you will be separated from the firm. That's a huge departure from
Yes.
but it's right.
Wow.
But
I
yeah,
didn't expect the last part, the
so yeah,
separated from the firm part. I didn't expect that.
you'll be separated. And so, if we want to be the best, and if we say we're excellent, then that means you cannot accept and tolerate mediocrity, right? So, but it says over these 2 years, we're going to coach, support, develop, train, do all the things we need to do to get you to this level. But after 2 years, if you haven't been able to demonstrate success, then perhaps this isn't for you, and that's okay because you could go to another agency and be a star. It just may not be here, and we just have to accept that. Just accept that and move on. So it was different. The program, the parameters of the program were different for Fenton. And so when we were there were some terminations and there were people that weren't making it. So then people were getting scared, like, oh, should we change? Should we change? Should we, we need to change the parameters of the program. So we did a retrospective. And that means folks can come in and they can offer, leadership can offer their perspectives on all the things that we did right or wrong. And that can be hard if it's your baby. You're letting people come in and tell you your baby's ugly or whatever. And so you sit and you listen to the critique and you have all your talking points for all the reasons why not. But there was a person, again, a very loud voice in the room who I had had many conversations with about the program and how we need to maintain its integrity, et cetera. And so after we had gone through this whole meeting, and people were like, oh, we should change it. We should leave those people that aren't ready to be promoted. We should leave them here and let them do other things. And this person, and it was just unexpected. She says, I don't think we should change a thing. I like it, and this is the way that it should be. And it was, support from an unexpected resource. And so as it stands, we still have the program. It remains intact as we originally rolled it out. But it was because of the conversations that I had with this individual throughout the program. She understood what we were trying to accomplish. And her influence, she's been at the firm 3 or 4 times as long as I have. Her influence is greater than mine. So you have to recognize, kind of how these pecking order things happen and
Okay.
partner with people. And I don't care whose it is. There's no pride of authorship. We have the program and we're going to move forward because it's what's right for the firm.
I love it. I love it. When I saw this slide that's in front of us, when I was looking at the deck, and it said listen. So just because I have a little bit of knowledge of kind of you and what things that seem to be important and things that even are important there at your workplace, I know that you are a firm believer in coaching. And employees receiving coaching, seeking coaching. And I think a big part of coaching is listening and being receptive to kind of what's coming across, because sometimes you sit in a space where you might not see where you're falling short or where your true skill sets are. So tell me what you meant in particular when you put listen here.
Yeah, sure. Listening is so important. That's in everything, all relationships, because negotiation really is about a relationship. But you want to listen in every negotiation, listen to everybody and be able to pick up on nonverbal cues. It's a gift to be able to read the room. And even in these virtual environments, reading the virtual room and observe when there's silence. You have to know when to be quiet and resist the urge to keep talking if someone else is quiet. Oftentimes, I coach my managers on this all the time. We'll be interviewing someone, or they're interviewing, and you'll ask a question. and the person may, they're gathering their thoughts or whatever, but they get nervous. They're uncomfortable in sitting in that silence. And then they start talking. I'm like, stop talking. Just be comfortable in the silence. And because otherwise, especially if you're in negotiation and you're just talking, you'll start saying stuff and end up negotiating against yourself. So
Mhm.
be comfortable in that silence. Never answer your own question. Ask your question and then be silent as you wait for the answer. I think
I
there's a
love
hmm?
I really appreciate that. Like the silence of things. I speak about that as we're coaching people in their interview process, because it's a negotiation, right? It's a back and forth, and I'm like, listen, don't be afraid of the silence. It's not your responsibility to fill that space in that particular moment.
But we get it's just who we are innately, and so the nervousness, because honestly, folks aren't great interviewers. Managers aren't great interviewers. Sometimes you're promoted, most times, especially in professional services, you're promoted because of your ability to service a client, not necessarily to be a skillful interviewer or a master leader of people or something. So it's an area that isn't their skill set. So they're nervous and they just start talking, 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 and so at the end of the interview, I'm like, well, tell me what you like about the person. Well, they can't even tell me because they've talked the whole time,
Right.
and forgot that they're really on a fact finding mission and they should just be quiet and listen to what that candidate has to say.
Uh,
Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. You see that often.
Yeah, I know you do. I bet.
You see it
Yeah,
all.
it's tough. It's tough. And then, but I think also when you're negotiating, another strong tactic you can use is the technique of mirroring, right? And so that's repeating the last few words or phrases that somebody else has just said, right? So not only does this allow you to confirm and clarify the statement, but subconsciously it lets the person know that, that you heard them and they feel heard and understood. So I use it all the time. If I'm talking, if someone's talking to people, I'll write down something they said. And then I'll preface, and then I'll say it back to them, but I'll preface it by saying, to Kenneth's great point, blah, 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 blah. At that point, we're good because you're not gonna argue against your own words. So I just use your own words against you. So that not against you, I should say, but I've used your own words to support my own position, or I
Sure.
show where there's agreement. So, but again, you won't know that if you're not listening.
I've had people tell me that in negotiations, oftentimes they're so concerned or committed, should I say, to getting their point across
Mhm.
that they missed a large part of what the other person was trying to convey. Do you see that in
Absolutely.
negotiations?
All the time. So, and it's just, you're really not listening because you're waiting for your time to jump in. So you miss all the nuance, all the jewels that the person has told you. If you're in client service, the client's going to tell you what they need. You just have to listen. Or we come in and say, I'm going to sell X. When the client really doesn't want that, but you're so committed to X, you miss that they told you, if you do this, I'll give you Y, Z, and start all over again. So you want to be quick to listen and slow to speak, but it does require discipline. It really does. But it's a very, very effective negotiation tactic. But you do have to, it's something you should practice. You could practice with your spouse, partner, you can practice anywhere. But if you can just listen and really be able to then mirror back to the person, I heard what you said. And as a result, this is what I think, or this might be something that could be mutually acceptable for all parties.
It's the Digital Career Success Series with Carla Wagner. Hey, this and all of our DCSS episodes can be found on the Urban League Jobs Network YouTube channel. Look, please drop your questions in the Q&A. We are getting close to that moment of the program. But right now, we're going to discuss how you maintain the relationships. So, Carla, we're speaking about maintaining the relationship, and I want to hear your thoughts on kind of how they even break down, or how people just continue to solidify and grow through them.
Yeah. I find that relationships break down in negotiations because one person's pushing too hard for their own agenda, right? And they're not hearing, like we just spoke about, they're not listening to what the other person is saying. If you're solely focused on what your one goal is and not willing to consider the alternatives or what this person is telling you, that's how negotiations break down. So you don't want that. You don't want to push too hard for your short-term agenda, because you'll damage that relationship in the long term. I always suggest that you treat negotiations not as a single transaction, but as part of an ongoing process in building your relationships. You want to be able to ask enough questions to find out what a win is, what a win looks like for the other party, and then work together so you can do it together. Maintain the relationship over long term, both sides benefit. Because the reality with your coworker, you're going to have to negotiate with them again. So you'll be talking to them tomorrow on some other topic, but you don't want to mess up over here because you're solely focused on trying to get your one point across.
So are there any, as far as maintaining relationships, so in a workplace, right? Negotiations can get a little heated and people can take things personal. Do you have
Mhm.
any tips on how an individual circles back to just kind of, I guess, calm the emotions in a situation to say, hey, listen, I did hear you in our discussion, and I hope you understood kind of where I was sitting in my I guess thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can go left, especially when we're, maybe we haven't prepared and we haven't listened. And so then it requires you to be the bigger person because you're going to have to go back and perhaps, I don't know, maybe you have to apologize and admit, I didn't consider all the possibilities, but I want you to know I remain open to it and would love to further the conversation, because you're going to get challenges. You should expect challenges, biases, and hesitations when you're trying to negotiate with someone, but you always have to respond with professionalism and poise. Especially when you're a person of color in the workplace and a Black woman in the workplace, because we have this stigma. And so you want to be able to respond with grace. You may not get all you want with the negotiations, but let's not forget, these are your colleagues, these are your family members, and you'll have to see them again tomorrow and negotiate. So if you're fair and you're generous, you're kind, you're poised, folks will remember that. My shero is Carla Harris, who works at Morgan Stanley. And she calls it she calls, building relationship currency, right? And she says, and I'll read this: once you build true relationship currency, its power will motivate people to act on your behalf. And that's really what you want. And we alluded to it earlier. If you have that currency, you want people, when you're not in the room, to still speak positively about you. So relationship currency can give you the ability to request something or take some action of someone else. It can connect you to other relationships. We get jobs not based on really what we know, but who we know, right? And it's all about those relationships. And then it affords you the grace if you make a mistake. And we all need that. So Carla says, earn your currency and spend it wisely. She's got
Hmm.
a couple books, but yeah, I think I love her. But yeah, it's something valuable. And I always think about the relationship currency. And I think I've built, and we all do, we work hard to build that currency. So that if I go to my boss and say, hey, I want to do this, yeah, she'll be like, all right. But that's because of the currency. So we don't spend it wisely and foolishly. I'm not going to spend it on some foolishness. But if it's something that I really believe in, I know it's going to propel us forward, then we'll do it. And we, do it up, and then you have to replenish, but it's always something. It's always something to work. And hey, how's your son? I know you got a new job today. How, whatever, how's that going? All the things that sometimes us introverts are challenged in doing, you have to push yourself to do.
So you're a connector, and I'm sure you're aware of that, but I'm going to tell you you've introduced us to our guest on the 20th, and one of our guests on the 20th. So I know that you're a connector. When we met, I could feel that in our conversation. I want to speak to you about the whole approach to negotiation when there's an imbalance at the table, right? Let's say there's a significant power imbalance at the table, and sometimes that impacts how people negotiate with senior leaders or executives. Do you have any advice on how people can approach being placed in a situation where they know that to your point, right, even prior, it shouldn't run the risk of costing you your job, but you may not be able to rebuild your reputation after after this negotiation if you're unsuccessful. Any thoughts on that and how people should approach that when there's an imbalance?
Well, sure, you want to respect it. You want to approach it respectfully, right? And giving all deference to the person. And that's why, again, the preparation, where I had to do some negotiation with the owner of our firm. Now, who am I? I shouldn't be in that room at all. But what's important? What's important to him? And so, when we were just vibing, just having a regular conversation, we found some common ground. And so that's what I use. And so now I understand, and with the help of my boss, I can, we can navigate things, but you do it respectfully. But then you also have to know, what does Kenny Rogers say? Know when to hold them, when to fold them. If it's not going your way, then you have to abort. And you'll have to figure out how to come back a different way. Not that, not that it's a no, but it may be delayed. And you have to be all right with that, because you want to be able to keep that road open. So if I need to go back to James on something else, I don't want him like, the last time you acted a fool. So that's why the grace and humility and all those things are important, because you understand the pecking order here. You understand where you are. But if you've got something of value and something that's going to propel, he wants to grow the business. So if I have something that I think is going to help him accomplish that goal, he'll listen. Right. And so, but it's your approach. But again, you can't be so focused on getting your own agenda across that you alienate others. That's why entering into a negotiation with the other person in mind, I find to be the most successful way.
Just in listening to you speak about that, I started thinking about emotional intelligence, right? And empathy on the other side of that. Probably a really key word for today as well, with everything that's going on out here. But, when you're in negotiations, how important is that?
You can't negotiate if you're not empathetic, right? It starts with everything. I can't believe I didn't have it, but I guess all these things kind of roll up into overall emotional intelligence. But if you're not aware and don't have the ability or the capacity for empathy and to understand it from someone else's position, because again, if you're just so focused on getting your own point across or your own agenda through, and you forget how that impacts others. I mean, we make those kind of decisions in HR every day. How does that impact the lives of our team members? This would be, okay, if we change the commission structure, how is that going to impact others? How are they going to react? So if you can think about that and work to overcome that stuff in advance, then you don't have some of the ill feelings, or some or have people catching feelings when you're proposing change, because it makes people uncomfortable. Change is hard for folks. And I love change. I think I'm energized by change, but I also know that people don't like it. So how do I do it so it's palatable for you and we can both get our goals achieved?
So kind of research, emotional intelligence, visualizing success as well, uh, working towards the win-win, all are kind of tenets of a successful negotiation process.
Absolutely. Yep. And then knowing when to pull back. Because if it's not happening, then just let it go. Let it go. And try another approach at another time. But you don't want to push to a point of alienation. We've all
So
been in those situations. We don't want that.
we really do not want that. That's for sure. All right, listen. Let's jump into the Q&As. I was peeking in. I cheated a little just to peek in and see what was happening, and there's quite a bit happening over there. So thank you all so very much for just being active as you usually are here on the Digital Career Success Series. We're going to jump into some of these questions with Carla Wagner, Chief People Officer, speaking about the art of negotiation. All right, Carla. Know what? Let me handle this first one first.
Okay.
We won't share the materials after the call, but you are able, Dominique, to visit probably by the end of the week, maybe early next week. This show will be on the Urban League Jobs Network YouTube channel. You'll be able to watch it in its entirety there. And also check out some of the other programming that we have there as well. We appreciate you for tuning in and checking in with us today. All right. So Carla, have you seen offers rescinded simply for asking to negotiate? How can one assess if it's safe to try? Whew.
I've never rescinded an offer for somebody wanting to negotiate. I will tell you this. So my strategy on salary, and this is mine, and this is just what I do where I work. I think it's important that you always put the best offer. As an employer, I want to make sure we put the best offer forward so that you're always going to say yes, right? So if you look at, who knew that Maslow would come, if you think about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? I want to take care of your basic needs so that when you come to Fenton or Finsbury, wherever, you are free to do your very best work, which means I'm going to find out what's important to you, because we've had these interviews. So now I'm kind of understanding what your long-term goals are and where you need to be. So I'm gonna give you, if you tell me 200,000, then I'm gonna pay you that, right? If we know that that's within our budget, I'm not gonna come and lowball you because now you've got some ill feelings already. So if I give you what you ask for, plus, and plus or whatever, and we can't come to an agreement, then I've seen where the candidate will walk away, and I'll be very respectful of that. But we've never pulled away an offer if someone asks, because the reality is, if they ask, you've got a couple choices as the employer. You can either acknowledge the request and do it, or no. And then sometimes the no is no with a stipulation, like, I can't do it now, but perhaps, as we talked about earlier, how about we give you a review in 6 months to get you where you need to be? Or how about I give you a sign-on bonus? I can't do the salary because it's outside the band, but how about I give you a sign-on bonus because that's outside, and it just has, we have some tips and tricks that we can use to make it possible to get you to yes, because that is the goal. But I would never, if somebody asked a question, pull back. But now if there's lots of questions, at some point you'd be like, all right, now that's enough.
I haven't seen much of that, especially once the individual has an actual offer letter in hand, right? I think there's a time for that, and the time would be after you have an offer, right? And they're kind of committed, or at least they appear to be committed to having you as part of the team. So, yeah, to Carla's point, I haven't seen much of people saying, "Hey, they want to negotiate, let's pull the offer," because
Yeah,
there are ways to kind of navigate through that.
we expect that you're going to try to get the best. That's your job at that
Yeah.
point, is to get what's best for you and your family at that time. So good, and they might just say yes. The worst they can say is no.
So we have another question here in the Q&A, and I'm going to try to just pull pieces of it, and hopefully you'll follow here. So this individual says they work for the government where merit increases are not standardized. So, there can be things that happen within a city, within a government, that won't allow for guarantees on advancement opportunities and/or pay increases, right? So, do you have any other ideas for local government workers who are making a point to negotiate in a setting where their market value may not have a lot of weight? So I'm trying to understand that completely. I don't know if you have some feedback on that, but it seems like, there's standardized increases, but they're looking to maybe negotiate for more that's aligned with their value proposition.
Yeah, that's tough, especially because I know that some government work, it's governed by a collective bargaining agreement, and so there may not be any flexibility, and that's tough. Having not having worked directly in those environments, I don't have any firsthand experience that I can pull to offer you, but yeah, but I definitely know, as having, living here in Lansing, Michigan, which is, the capital of Michigan, and so many folks working for the state government, you get those increases based on what the contract says. And that is what it is. And so there's a lot of rigidity when you're working in these large government and state and local government offices, as opposed to when you're working for a private employer and you have a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Listen, this is an interesting question because I think it's going to involve some of your chief people officer skills, right? Uh, how does one negotiate with maybe a dated skill set? They're in a place and they're looking at another opportunity, maybe internally, and they've done some of the work, but maybe it's 5 years out, but they're looking to position themselves to be considered for this new opportunity. Any advice on that?
Well, regardless of when you learn the skill, you've acquired the mastery of the competency, right? So, I've done stuff 10 years ago, but that doesn't mean it's not relevant now. So I know how to do it, is how you would apply it now, how you bring that forward, because we're all just a combination of our lifelong learning. So it's okay that you learned it a while ago, but how do you apply it in today's world? And I think being able to articulate that is where you find success.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think a lot of people, things are changing, right? And people are going to have to understand that with the advent of AI and some of these other tools and resources that we're using to do our day-to-day jobs, right? So I think you may be losing something from your past, but you can speak to being a continuous learner and talk about how those new skill sets may be to your advantage in this new opportunity that you're pursuing.
Yeah, and some like AI, nobody, we all know nothing together. And so let's, we can all, enhance our learning. We're trying it out. Everybody's tipping their toe into to AI. But yeah, regardless of when you had the experience, you got that competency and it will be with you forever. No one can take that away. You just have to apply it. And how you may have applied something 10 years ago is not how you would do it now, but you still know how to do the work. So it's just how it works today.
So another question here. What strategies would you recommend for handling objections or resistance during a negotiation? How can one keep the conversation constructive?
Yeah. Um, so if you are, having a conversation and folks are just throwing, objections or asking questions, I think, focusing on the goal, keeping your goal in mind and focusing on the subject matter at hand. Hopefully you've done some preparation, you understand what's important to some of those people in the room. And you can speak to that and what the ROI of whatever it is that you're looking for. And then that honestly, because I've been stuck a couple times, and that's when having some of those people, the big voices in the room, can then jump in and help, and help you, right? And because there are folks that enjoy the verbal jousting. I am not one, but there are folks that do, and and they can speak positively on behalf of your initiative. But I never, and if a person, if you just can't get some type of agreement, they're continuing to ask questions, you're answering them, they continue, you could say, I'd love to have, for the sake of time and everyone's time here today, I'm happy to have a deeper discussion with you on, offline so that we can get into some of more of the details, because what you don't want to do is have the whole meeting spiral downward and then you don't get to finish what you were trying to do.
Yes, yes. All right, another question here. Do you recommend reaching back out in regards, I guess, to a follow up on a position that's not available yet that was presented to you? Okay, so what I'm getting here is, I guess, someone told you about an opportunity, and the opportunity maybe they haven't released it for whatever reason. It's not that they're not hiring at this current time. Do you wait for them to reach back out, or how do you show you're still interested? I'm gonna give that to you, Carla. I see the easy response, but I'm interested in your thoughts.
So I'm not quite sure I understand. So if there's something you're interested in, you have to get it. The only way you're going to get it is to continue to show your interest, right?
Yeah.
So if you send the email follow up, hey, how you doing? Just checking in. And so sometimes it's that squeaky wheel that gets the oil. Like there was this person that used to email me, I don't know, once or twice a month. And honestly, sometimes it would get on my nerves. But when it was the perfect opportunity came available, he was in the back of my mind because he would email me so frequently. So I'm not saying you email folks to the point of annoyance, but you always want to keep touch, top of mind. Connect with them on LinkedIn, send them a note, follow them, and maybe they've done something in their organization. And you can write to them and say, "Hey, I saw you did XYZ. That was amazing." Or, "Wow, Fenton is, doing some amazing things. I'd love to talk more about that. You want to grab coffee?" Those type of things to keep you top of mind with an individual, I think is always apropos.
Man, I love that tip right there. To kind of reach out casually, maybe about some other things, just
Mhm.
to kind of keep your name fresh in that person's mind. I had a client that we were working. Actually, this was in Philadelphia. This was with the Urban League of Philadelphia, and we had a client that they were interested in securing talent for their organization. But they shared with me. They said, "Ken, I'm going to tell you about this opportunity, and you can send people to me, but when you send them directly to me, I'm going to ignore them." They're like, "I'll speak to them initially, and I'll just tell them, hey, can you reach out to me next week?" And then they'll reach out next week, and I'll say, "You know what? I'm really busy. Can you reach out to me the following week?" They were doing this just to see who really wanted the job. I
Mhm.
wasn't a big fan of the tactic, but I was able to let people know, hey, just stay in the game. They're not going to ghost you completely. They just want to see how bad you want it.
Yeah. That probably wouldn't be a strategy that I do. I can appreciate it though. But you do want to stay in the game. And so if there's ways, if you're following the company, I think that's a really It was fine. I think it's a really good way. If you see their company in the news or something, send in an email like, "Wow, that was amazing! Congratulations on the on your promotion. Congratulations on the acquisition." Everybody wants to be affirmed in some way, shape, or form. So if you have an opportunity to do that, or say, "Oh, wow, I saw the good things that you all are doing. That's awesome." Yeah, as a reminder, I would love, I'd love to be a part of that or something like that. Or, hey, just letting it might change the situation. All those are fine. But yeah, just stick at it. Tenacity is important.
All right. So I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm curious about this because I think you're such a great communicator. Was there ever a time when a negotiation didn't go as planned, right, for you? What did you learn from the experience and how did you adapt your approach for future negotiations?
Hmm. Did it never, let me think about that. Um, Yeah, maybe. I'm trying. I'm trying. Nothing. Nothing comes to mind vividly. But I mean, we all have had successes and failures in our career, right? And so I think the one, well, maybe, and this maybe isn't a negotiation, but I just remember this just being a seminal moment in my career when I was working at Movado Group, and I think I was a manager or something, and I thought I was going to get promoted, and I did all the things, all the things, all the things, or I thought I was doing all the things. It was time for promotion, and I didn't get it. I didn't get promoted, and I was mad. And I came to work and shut the door. I was pouting, wasn't talking to anybody because I felt like I should have been promoted. And, my boss, when I finally started talking to her again, she's like, you've gotta, do these things and, and meet or exceed expectations all the way across the board. And at that point, I could have chosen to be angry and bitter and go find some other job, or to stick it out and try to learn and see what she was trying to teach me. And I'm so glad that I did because, I changed my approach to working with others and being more empathetic and changing the way that how I viewed things and my perspective, how I looked at issues and not taking things personally, just things as you grow and mature. And then one day we're sitting having a conversation. She's like, I need you to do this, 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 and this. And I was like, oh, okay, so whatever. And as I'm walking out the door, she goes, and one more thing. And I said, what's that? She goes, and now, congratulations, you're getting promoted. And
Nice.
so it was, and so then, sitting crying and all the things, because by that time I had just like, well, that may not happen. But for me, it was being able to, even in that situation, where clearly I had failed in some things, learning that there is a lesson in everything and how you choose to attack that. So I could have, I could have been bitter, but instead I chose, I think, to be better. And for me, that really changed my career, my approach. And I would not be here today had it not been for that moment. So I think sometimes you have to go back and see where the lesson is and retool, change your approach, and be willing to make that change. Because I think that's where some of us get so like, I'm right, but clearly I wasn't, right? And so there's a lesson in learning and everything. And so just being willing to embrace that, I think, is super important.
You know what, I love closing on that on a certain level because I think today, November 6th, 2024, it's going to be really important for a lot of people to kind of look at the lesson, right, and look at how we can change. So, with that being said, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to offer closing remarks to the Digital Career Success Series audience.
Well, first, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I think if I just leave you, I just leave you with what Carla says, spend your capital wisely. Spend it wisely because you can't get it back. Once you spend your capital wisely, and I think that you'll do well. Yeah, I wish I had
I
some.
like that. I like it. No, no, no. That's great. That's great. Look, I'm gonna ask you this question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. Our audience, they love to kind of know what people are listening to, what they're reading. Any podcast or books that you can recommend for our audience? They don't even have to be related to negotiation. It could just be things that allow you to get better professionally.
Well, I'm rereading the 48 Laws of Power.
Okay. Okay. That's a
Um,
that's a big reread right there.
But it's good. And
Yeah.
when I read it, I learn something different every single time. And it's important, because especially, And it's so funny because I laugh when I read some of them because there's things like never, revealing your true intention. And my grandmother used to tell me, know all you tell, but don't tell all you know. And so, but these things are true, and it really does help you apply yourself in the workplace. And so I just really always want to find a way to continually improve. And so it's a big read, but yeah, that one, it always, I always find a new nugget.
You've definitely improved us today, so we appreciate you. Listen, if you want to stay connected to Carla Wagner, the work that she's doing out here as Chief People Officer at Fenton, and the Black Santa experience, please don't hesitate. Check out the website for both of those. And also, she's on LinkedIn and she's pretty active. I see her over there sharing and assisting and supporting because that's kind of what she does. All right, if you want to stay connected with the work we're doing at East Coast Executives, we will be in Miami today through Friday for the Black Enterprise Black Men Excel Summit. So we'll be there, but you can check us out, eastcoastexecutives.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Please connect with me. That's one of the biggest things I enjoy about this, Carla. Every week I get connections and I get the opportunity to just speak to people about some of the things they're doing and maybe the way that we've added value here on the Digital Career Success Series. I'd like to thank the audience for joining us today. And listen, we're going to do it again on November 20th, Upskilling for the Digital Age. We got Afua and Chris coming through. Chris is a friend of the family. Am I right, Carla?
He is. He's good people. Make sure you come to that one. He's going to be good.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a great session. I think both of those personalities will merge, and that is sponsored by Verizon. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Corey O'Donnell, Wanda Jackson, the entire team at the National Urban League for allowing me to do this, but also just for making this a special, special platform. I'd also like to thank our guest today, Carla Wagner, but I'd like to thank the audience for tuning in. I know a lot of people didn't feel like doing much of anything today, but you came and you decided to invest in yourself and you decided to support us here at the National Urban League, and we thank you for that. We'll see you November 20th, and everyone be safe, please. Thank you.